Okay, so good evening and welcome to the Town of Shelburne Development Review Board of Wednesday, March 21st, 2018. The first item of business is going to be to move a few things around on the agenda. So first would be we would move item 2 to the end, I guess. We would put that, we'll call it item 12 for the time being. How's that? And then the other would be to we're going to take and move 2 applications for Quiniosca Golf Course. That would be SP 1803 and CU 1801 to the beginning of the agenda, so we can make a motion to continue that, so we don't have people hung up here waiting around for that to happen. So would anybody like to make a motion then as recommended by staff? Go ahead, David.
Just a comment in regards to the application pending before the board for the, what we call the golf course consolidation application. That one, we do understand, does need to be continued based on some recent revisions in the design plans. However, the other application on behalf of Quiniosca for the parking lot restriping, we'd like to have that continue on the agenda if possible.
Kate, do you have any thoughts on that? We discussed it a little bit. Given the fact that it's the same parcel, is that an issue?
The hang up on that is just the adjoiners weren't giving the proper amount of time.
Yeah, I guess, technically, David, there was a problem, I guess, with the distribution of the notices to abutting property owners, so I think for the sake of not having something blow back, be better off to just push both of those out. I think you'll probably be at the top of the list the next meeting, so. Would anybody, I will then make a motion to, 1, move item 2, our reorganization, to the end of the agenda, and also to move the applications SP 1803 and CU 1801.
And SP 1802. That's 9 and 10 for.
And SP 1802 to the end of the agenda. We're going to put that actually is going to be item number 6 on the agenda. Right? Okay.
I'll second that motion.
You will. Okay. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. So we will then jump to item number 3, which is public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to bring something to the board's attention that is not on the current agenda? Okay. Not hearing or seeing any comments, we'll move then to item 4, which is approval of our minutes of the March 7th, 2018 meeting. Does anyone have any edits, corrections, comments, or adjustments to that set of minutes? Anyone? I then would make a motion to approve and accept the approval of the minutes of March 7th, 2018.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So that pushes us off to item 5, which is a design review application DR 1803, which is an application by the Celebri United Methodist Church for design review approval of a new set of concrete steps with a metal railing to be installed on the west side of the existing church. This property is at 30 Church Street. It is in the Village Center District, Stormwater Overlay District, and the Village Design Review Overlay District. So, Mr. Dunham, would you like to come and I need to swear you in, and if you would please use the microphone, I would appreciate that. Very good. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you, sir. And if you could introduce yourself and tell us about your project.
I'm Chuck Dunham with the Methodist Church, and basically we'd like to replace a set of steps that leads into what we call the parlor of the building. It's on the west side of the church. I think you all have a plan that shows that. That's to replace a set of steps that eventually became unsafe due to their age and condition. And so we went before the Historic Preservation Committee, and they gave us a recommendation based on the fact that we would have the concrete not look like new concrete, but look like older concrete. And we've had a supplier, SD Ireland, come down and take a look at it. They said they thought they could make it approximately the same color as the stonework on the building in that location. So that's what we plan to do.
Very good. Any board members have any questions of the applicant? It's a pretty straightforward application. Is there anyone in the audience that has anything regarding this application they would like to address? I see your successor smiling over there. He's not going to say anything. Good. Then would someone like to consider making a motion regarding the approval of this design review approval?
I'll make a motion to grant design review approval of application DR 1803 for precast concrete steps on the west side of the Shelburne United Methodist Church at 30 Church Street with the following conditions. Concrete used to make the step will be darkened. The steps will have a flat black metal railing, and a zoning permit shall be required prior to the installation.
Second.
Second, we'll give that, I think Lisa beat you to that one. We'll give that second to Lisa. And any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Chuck. Thank you. Good luck. Okay, so that takes us to item 6, which would be the new item 6, which is application, I want to make sure I get the right one, SP 1802 and SP 1803 and CU 1801. So the motion then, I guess, would be to continue these until our next available meeting, which I believe is April 4th of 2018. I will make that motion to continue. Would anybody like to second it? Oh, he got you. Jeff's got that one. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good. Push that one. Kick that can down the road. Did we actually move the,
Did you grab both of those applications, both site plan applications?
I
And
did,
the, okay, I
did.
did catch it.
but we're gonna wait for the hitting, the, practice facility. So that takes us back up to, let's see, I guess that one has become 7, application CU 17-13R1, which is an application by CEA on behalf of Charles and Marna Davis for a conditional use review. This proposal includes the expansion of a previously approved lakeshore erosion control structure. This property is at 4135 Harbor Road. It's located in the Rural District, Lakeshore Overlay District, Floodplain, and Watercourse Overlay District. I need to swear anybody in. I'd like to do it all at once. Anybody who's going to speak to this application. I know of one person. Oh, all right. Well, in case you do, we'll swear you in, Gail. How's that? So, do you hereby affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, under the pains and pains of penalty of perjury?
Do now.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Mr. Marshall.
This particular
property and the proposed seawall stabilization project appeared before the board previously. The plan up on the screen right now identifies the property limits, and the walls that were approved by the DRB previously included what we call the far north wall, the main wall around the house, and then the south wall. And this application actually, so there's about 900 feet, a little bit more than that, associated with the original approval. This application actually looks to do a small infill to better tie in the south wall in with the existing conditions. Right at this location, this is an existing drive or walkway that comes down from the main plateau down to the shoreline. And right now, this particular south wall and the cottage location right here created a little bit of exposure or the ability for water to get back behind this south wall. And what we're looking to do was basically tie everything together at this particular location with this application. Kate, if we go to sheet 1.1, or the next sheet, there we go. So you were just looking at, I described this as the walkway or the ramp coming down from the upper plateau down towards the shoreline. This is the existing cottage, and this is what we call the south wall. The highlighted portion represents the proposed infill component here, and you can see that it has characteristics similar to the previously permitted main wall around the building, in which we basically bring that face of the wall back into existing conditions and tie that off at with basically a wall dying into the embankment or the grade. So that's basically the application. Kate did a nice job as far as summarizing the application components. Specifically, the existing wall is being built with a dark gray material. Again, the intent not to bring attention to this particular seawall, but basically to try to have it blend in with the background as much as possible as you view it from the lake. And we're proposing to use the same materials with this particular infill component. And out of all that, perhaps now is the best time to entertain questions from the board.
Dave, could you just describe what's there in that location right now? It looks like there's a dock and some existing steps.
Yep.
Right?
So right now there is a wooden porch that comes off the front of the cottage and then steps that walk down to the lake. And then there is also a seasonal dock that basically occupies this area and actually does go out further into the lake when it's fully employed. This particular application basically seeks to remove the existing stairs and to replace them with a more durable product. Basically, this particular wall would protect this walkway from lakeshore wave action and the like, but nonetheless, ultimately, you would come from this plateau, I'll call it, out in front of the cottage and walk down to the shoreline accordingly. The zoning regulations do allow for a certain number of stairs per 400 feet of frontage, and in this particular case, we still remain compliant with the zoning regulation maximum number of stairways in regards to what is previously approved with this project as well as what's proposed to be approved. So in essence, we're actually just replacing the less durable stairway with a more durable material.
Seems pretty straightforward. Makes sense.
I suppose I just wanted to check in with Caitlin because there were a couple of your comments. One of them about whatever portion is being built within. See, I'm not familiar with so we should inquire about the portion of the wall that extends past the 102-foot elevation contour.
Yes.
That's my
This
inquiry.
is a common dilemma for every seawall application that comes before the board based on the way that the current zoning bylaw reads. It was intended to preclude structures from being built above the elevation 102 contour within 100 feet of the setback of the lake. But when you build a seawall that actually is higher than elevation 102, what we try to do in these seawalls is try to shoot for about elevation 106. What that does is takes into account either high water with moderate wave action or lower normal water with very high wave action. But when you build above elevation 106, so if this is 102 and this is 106, and the existing grade comes back like this, the only way you can get the top of the wall back tied into the existing grade is at a point above elevation 102. So we've always explained this to the board in the past, and they said, yep, something the planning commission needs to fix. In recognition, there's actually some ambiguity in the zoning bylaw as far as what you can and can't do when it comes to seawalls and how you're trying to stabilize the shoreline. That seems to have always carried the day in the past. And we did provide within the application written materials in regards to those thoughts and supporting narrative, things that actually had been submitted on prior applications. And out of all that, we felt that Kate has done her job, because her job is to identify any non-compliance issues, and our job is to identify how we actually use the rules to make this project successful. And this just happens to be one of those ambiguities within the rules that had good intent, but for seawalls, it doesn't work.
I do recall that, and just for clarification, that non-compliance existed on the plan that was approved earlier.
That is correct. It's consistent with the previous approval.
And the only other thing I wanted to maybe ask about is that, again, your staff comment says that there is a letter attached which we may wish to review for adequacy, which is the letter providing a technical basis for the project. I did not see that in the materials, but
Okay, yes, well,
And I didn't
Dave
mean
wrote
to.
the letter, so while I scramble for it, maybe he can review why this is the only way to protect
So-
the shoreline.
Good point. Typically, what we find in shoreline environments is that if vegetative stabilization methods, bio stabilization methods are appropriate or they work, typically you'll see that Mother Nature has adopted those herself, and they represent a nice natural way to stabilize the shoreline. We do have portions of the property that do successfully employ those particular types of methods, but we do have areas where there is a very sharp transition between the shoreline and ultimately the plateau. That is basically the occupation area. And in those particular areas, what we have is a large amount of erosion that's undermining the trees along that particular area to the point where the trees are starting to tip into the lake. So what we're trying to do is basically protect that soil with a very stable, a highly stable material that basically can withstand both wave forces and ice forces when the ice comes very high. And so that's a narrative of ultimately that particular discussion point. Those were, again, all included in the previous application for additional clarification if need be. But that's why we find we end up with, at least at these abrupt changes in grade, that we really do need to have a very stable material and one that's hard in nature that isn't going to degrade over time.
Capture it for you? Yep. Yeah, I mean, my observation is this is just really kind of tidying that up, and it's the most effective way to stabilize that corner of the lot.
The application did include photographs of how the shoreline has become undermined with that particular wave action along the shoreline. So we felt that between that evidence and perhaps this narrative that we could tie it all together that way.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? So we'll open it up to public questions. Anybody in the audience have any questions regarding this application? Gail? You're sworn in, so if you'd identify
I
yourself.
wasn't familiar with this before, I don't think so. I'm just asking because it's something the Natural Resources Committee has often asked for, and that is, what is the material, and is it a natural material that mimics what is there, or is it a constructed material?
Good question. It is it's a quarried dark rock. I happen to have a photograph. of some of the work that's being undertaken now. Kate had the opportunity to go out to the site with Jack Milbank from our office to see some of the interim work that was being done. I don't mean to introduce this as evidence, but it does at least document the narrative that was included in the original application as far as, I don't know if you want to pass that around, that at least documents and confirms the material colors. This happens to be a quarried material that happens to basically allow it to be constructed efficiently, perhaps.
Similar to what's there, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there are different colors rock as far as that particular shoreline, but again, choosing one that is darker rather than lighter was part of the goal of, again, not having this jump out at you from the shoreline, or try to minimize that feature as much as possible.
Okay. Anything else, Gail? Good? Okay. So, we have a couple of draft motions here. I would happily move to finalize the record for this application, CU 17-13R1. We'll start with that. Seconded. All those in favor? Aye. And I would also make a motion to close this hearing with and direct staff to write a decision indicating approval for this application with the following conditions. One, a zoning permit shall be required prior to any improvements being made. Two, any removal of vegetation shall require a lakeshore vegetation cutting application. Three, within 90 days of project completion, a professional engineer shall certify that the project has been constructed according to the approved plans. That's it. Seconded by Lisa. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Good. Thank you. So that moves us to the next application, which is SUB 17-02. This application is by Lamoureux and Dickinson on behalf of the Sterling Land Company for a site plan and preliminary plan review. This proposal includes the subdivision and reconfiguration of 2 lots into 4 lots, including an open space lot and the construction of 3 duplex residences. These properties are at 25 and 39 Irish Hill Road. They are located in the Shelburne Falls Mixed-Use District, the Residential District, and the Floodplain and Watercourse Overlay District. So I'm going to do this in one shot again. Everybody who's going to testify to this, please stand up and I will swear you in. Do you hereby swear affirm to tell the truth and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
Thank you. So we'll leave it to the applicant to kick this off. Please use the please use the mic and identify yourself.
My name's Andy Rowe with Lamoureux and Dickinson. To my left is Bart Frisbee with Sterling Construction and Sterling Lane Company. And also here tonight is Colin Frisbee from Sterling Construction, Sterling Lane Company. On November 1, after a site visit and a hearing, the board granted sketch plan approval for this project. We're here tonight for a preliminary review. The project involves a total of 5.4 acres. That's both in the residential zoning district and the Shelburne Falls mixed-use district. It also includes the floodplain and watercourse overlay along the La Platte River. Just one note in regards to the floodplain and watercourse overlay. We have obtained 3 letter of map amendments from FEMA that has better defined the limits. Although it doesn't define the base flood elevation on the 3 lots, it at least defines what is not below the base flood elevation. So it's a little different how FEMA defines things sometimes in an area where base flood elevations aren't called out on the flood insurance rate maps, but we do have correspondence that was included in the application that essentially allows us to establish that the floodplain and watercourse overlay district through this area is 100 feet from the center of the river and not defined by the 37 feet from the edge of the special flood hazard area. So that provided a little bit more room on the back of the lots. We have a total of 4 lots. The fourth lot is north of the stream. The other 3 lots, each proposed with a duplex, are located to the south of the stream with a 20-foot wide shared driveway providing access to all 3 lots, including the first one, which has frontage on Irish Hill Road, but again, we'll have access from that shared driveway. All of the development is south of the stream, and from the sketch plan, it doesn't show on this plan, but if we go to sheet 2, or when we get to sheet 2, the northernmost duplex was pulled south about 20 feet to increase the separation to the stream. The board had also asked that we move the southernmost duplex on lot 1, A and B, further away from Irish Hill Road rather than just meet the 30-foot front yard setback. So that's a minimum of 37 feet now. I guess we did want to emphasize that while we've shown footprints for grading purposes, the footprints of the homes would be designed between the builder and the homeowner. And they might be modified a little bit, but certainly the intent is to at least maintain the 37 feet along Irish Hill Road. And then again, all of the homes would be within the building envelope. With the additional room that was gained in the backyards, with the establishment of the floodplain and watercourse overlay district, we've proposed to come in 15 feet with the building envelopes from that floodplain and watercourse overlay district, so we don't have a situation where the building would be right up tight to that overlay limit. It would give room to have a little bit of yard back there, constructibility. And actually, as shown on this sheet here, we're proposing to place boulders along that overlay district limit in order to permanently define it for the homeowners, rather than just have it be a line on paper. We've got boulders shown along that limit, at least on the backs of lots 1, 2, and 3, to provide a physical marker for the homeowners to delineate that overlay district.
So those are, they're the non-continuous lines just to the east of that delineation? They're not-
Correct. That would be where the building envelope, again, where we've,
Okay.
rather than have the building envelope extend all the way to the overlay district limit, we've pulled it in 15 feet so that it would ensure that the home was offset from that overlay district line for constructability purposes, for, to make sure that there was a little bit of space in the backyard there.
Okay.
That's a general overview. We could either respond to questions or start going through the staff report, whatever the pleasure of the board is.
I think going through the staff report on some of the items where there's some comments that warrant some discussion on.
So I guess I'll start, if there's an X in staff indicated compliance, I'll sort of move through those, but stop at other
I don't
ones
think
where
we
they're.
need to address those.
Right. So I guess the first one I'm stopping at is 1900.3A regarding vehicular and pedestrian circulation. We have shown the clearing that was recommended by the Highway Department on the inside of the curve at the easterly abutment of the bridge in order to improve sight distances, not only for the proposed driveway, but also for the traveling public in general along Irish Hill Road. The Select Board is considering and may have actually approved speed limit reduction along this segment of Irish Hill Road. We did talk with the town manager about installing some hidden drive right signs at the same time as those new speed limit signs were installed. If they're not installed as part of the speed limit, change, those would be installed as part of this application.
That's been changed. I drove down there today and noticed. Yeah.
Oh, they did change it? Okay.
So I haven't looked to see whether the hidden drive right signs are in. We did exchange emails with the town manager on that, but
It's 30.
They dropped it
I didn't
down.
notice.
if they're not in, adding it as a condition of this approval is certainly acceptable. It was recommended as part of our site distance memo that was included with this application, but also was included with the sketch plan application.
That was the one that Roger. that's
Correct.
in Roger's letter?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
In this, we were looking at the site distances under the previously posted speed limit. The site distances actually would decrease with the new posted speed limit, but again, I'm sure it will take a little while for behavior to follow.
What is the proposed tree on sheet one? Concerned about trees right next to Irish Hill Road and next to the proposed private road. Again, talking about the site distances.
The type of trees or
Type of trees, big trees, tall trees.
big trees? Those are American elms that were proposed along Irish Hill Road, and the reason that they're set back as far as they are, rather than being up in the typical position of a street tree, is to maintain that site distance along Irish Hill Road. We didn't want to clear at the eastern end of the bridge abutment and then install street trees that would conflict.
How high would a 2.5-inch caliber tree be?
Initially, 12 to 15 feet, probably.
Okay.
Typically, the branching height would probably be 6 feet.
Should be at least 6 feet, right.
The good thing about the elms is that they're V-shaped or
Yeah,
V-shaped,
going
so they're probably the best selection not to block views. So.
Yeah, okay.
So continuing on to the site plan review items, the next one is probably 1900.3B, the comments from the fire department. And I think their comments were primarily focused on a wider road, increasing the width of the proposed drive from 20 feet, as it's shown on the plans, to 24 feet, and providing a turnaround at the end. And we would like to keep 20 feet in order to minimize the amount of impervious area, not just in terms of minimizing impervious in general, but also given this project's location adjacent to the river. We didn't have this specific conversation with the Conservation Commission, but they were obviously encouraging minimizing the amount of impervious area as well. And I know we've had that discussion with the board in the past.
And just to get an idea, I mean, each residence would have a 2-car garage, or?
Yes, so the driveways that are shown now, again, there's a minimum 30-foot front yard setback. That applies
Yep.
to the driveway. So are the homes that front on the private drive, so the driveway would be at least 30 feet long. And the way they're shown now, you'd have 30 feet coming back from the shared drive and at least 40 feet wide to accommodate that 2-car garage.
Yeah.
And the way they're shown now is they would be centered in the middle, so you'd be able to double that 2-car garage width to about 40 feet.
So you would basically have room off the road for 4 vehicles per residence? 2
Correct.
in the garage and 2 in the driveway?
Correct.
So there's not much chance of there needing to be much on-street parking, seems like.
Right, I think that would be really unlikely.
So, going with that thought, if you had a guest coming and they pulled down the street and they wanted to go back onto Irish Hill Road, how do they get back to Irish Hill? Do they have to back up on Irish Hill Road, or can they turn around? All the driveways are full.
If all the driveways were full, which, as he pointed out, you'd have 2 cars in the garage plus 2 additional, if the driveways were as shown, you've got a 31-foot drive at least, assuming that the garage was pulled all the way up to the setback.
I'm thinking about the turnaround.
Right. So you've got a drive,
Got
a vehicle
space and a
taking
half
up,
deep.
a portion of that 31 feet, you'd have at least 10 feet behind that vehicle, depending on the size of the car. It wouldn't
Let me
be
back
a,
up, let me restate the question. If the driveways are full and someone pulls in, like the UPS truck, how do they get out of there? How do they get back to Irish Hill Road?
you would still, even if there were vehicles parked in the driveway up tight to the garage, you'd still have at least 10 feet behind those vehicles. Plus
So
the
you'd have
little
to-
stub
you'd
at the
have
end.
to- So it-
It might potentially take a little jockeying around, but you'd have at least 10 feet behind those vehicles, 40 feet wide, plus the stub at the very end of the drive.
that's it's kind of iffy.
30-something feet.
I'm thinking,
What is the reasoning for not having a turnaround at the end?
The additional impervious area and try to minimize the footprint of development.
I have a safety concern because not all drivers will be as good as professional UPS and all those kind of drivers. I'm thinking of young drivers, drivers that aren't as skilled and adept. They might not think there's an opportunity to turn around, and they would attempt to back out, and that would be bad.
How many bedrooms is each home? I'm just trying to get a sense of how many drivers
Probably
there might be
request
in.
water allocation for 4, but in talking with Bart, it probably seems unlikely that there would be many 4-bedroom homes there, that just given the overall setting and the fact that they're duplexes, they're likely to be 3.
So
And they could be.
you have an empty space.
I want to see a
Every
turnaround.
bedroom has a,
Yeah, I want to see a turnaround.
So if we were to widen the driveway, the last driveway, by an additional,
It doesn't have to be a cul-de-sac, it doesn't have to be a round thing, it could be just so there's an opportunity where someone can go, oh, I can go like that and pull up, do my turn back there.
if the last
It would
driveway,
invite someone to do that.
if the last driveway was widened, would that be
I don't,
acceptable? I mean, in addition to the normal width that the driveway would need to be, if it
that
was
driveway
widened
would be
additionally.
tied to that property. They'd park their boat
yeah,
there.
I don't share this concern. The chance of having 4 people have cars at each,
It's visitors, someone
Residents.
has a party.
but do all of them have a party on the same night? I mean, there's always going to be a place to
big
turn
party.
around.
Again,
I think you're designing for
I'm,
a kind of excessive. And for this project so close to the stream, I think the advantages of less impervious kind of outweigh.
demonstrate, not here and now, but in the next one, how someone would be invited to do their 3-point turn in there and not be enticed to back out onto Irish Hill Road. I'm not gonna come up with an answer, but I'm concerned about that. I wanna make it seem more appealing to do the turn or the turnaround inside there, so they're not tempted to back up.
I just can't see anybody being tempted to, but why?
You
would
don't
anybody
know,
be
you don't know.
tempted to
Because you
back
don't have
up?
a choice.
You don't know. If
I can't imagine every driveway being full of cars. I mean, and then you still have 10 to 12 feet behind the cars to turn around. So it's,
then you're,
I mean, it's going to take more than a 3-point turn, but I don't have that concern.
Well, I mean, think about splitting the difference. So if you have a 20-foot wide road there, plus the driveway, off of that road, I mean, how much potential would you have for, sort of a gravel shoulder or something like that, or at least, I mean, not impervious surface, but at least a clear enough surface for, if somebody had to, they know they could use it.
right.
The gravel surface still counts as
Impervious, yeah.
All right.
I mean, and they're
And there's no curbs on this road, right? So,
Correct.
I mean, it's not like,
And if we were to do something, we'd prefer to do it on the downslope on the riverside rather than be on the upslope side, conflict with the grass swale that's there in the slope.
So, yeah, because you're taking care of treating all the water on the uphill side, right? So you've got a pretty steep embankment there. With the exception of, is there any opportunity, it would essentially be where the trailer is positioned right now, that's relatively flat? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, would it be possible to maybe widen the road at that point and make some sort of like a bulb out? And you'd have to chase the water around that or put a culvert underneath there.
I think it would be, if that's what the board is looking for, I think it would be preferable to do something at that end of the driveway rather than the far end.
Well, yeah, because the grades present some challenge there, and then, you know, the function of the, if I'm reading this right, you've got are you doing, these are all grass line swales along so those are dry swales with under drain on the east side of the road.
Correct.
Correct. So, and that's a pretty important part of the stormwater treatment. If you look at the grading plan on sheet 2.
And would
I would offer that I'm not gonna design your project for you, but I would suggest that at some point along this roadway, there's some type of a bulb out or somewhere that would help the turning radius or backing radius of vehicle. And we've also got a request from the fire department for them to be able to turn their fire truck around. So it's kind of a compromise. We're gonna end up disturbing a lot more soil, and you could end up with a huge retaining wall there and sacrifice a lot of stormwater treatment. So that's kind of the trade-off here, I think.
if it's acceptable to the board, I think we could do something at the Irish Hill Road end. I think as you were suggesting, you know, maybe opposite the driveway here. I guess our question would be, if it was the width of a parallel space, for example, combined with the 20 feet of the driveway plus the 10 feet that you'd have in front of the first duplex, if there were in fact cars parked in front of the garage there, you know, you'd have 10 feet on one side, 20 feet for the drive, 10 feet on the other side, give you a fair amount of room to turn around. It might not look like a typical turnaround, but it would certainly give you that room, and it would be closest to Irish Hill Road if somebody did pull in there by mistake and wanted to turn around and get out. We could certainly work that into the plan. Got it.
Yep. And then we also have a request from the fire department to widen this road out to 24 feet. So, and I know why they're doing this, because when they go to set up their vehicles, they need a place to, you know, firm ground for their outriggers, for the, you know, vehicles, I believe. That's part of their, not that they'd be using a big ladder truck here. I guess my solution there would be to keep the pavement profile where it is, but maybe indicate some reinforced shoulders on the side of the road, on either side of the road, for a couple feet past the pavement.
We've got 2-foot gravel shoulders as it is, just carrying the gravel out beyond the edge of the pavement.
Yep. I'm looking at. Ah, there we are. Gotcha. I was looking at the wrong section. How about maybe just pushing the shoulders out another foot on either side? That'd be a reasonable compromise.
What's the width they need for the outriggers? I thought it was 16 feet.
Get those outriggers on the big thing coming out.
I think it was 18.
I thought it was 18 feet, but,
I think the 24, they're kind of looking for both to get, again, from what I recall from discussions with the fire department on other applications, is they're looking to get the outriggers and then have enough room for a vehicle to potentially get by while they're set up.
Oh, I see.
so my solution there would be to just extend the shoulders out from 1 foot to 2 foot, Andy.
Add an additional foot? We've got 2 foot shoulders now. You're
I'm
saying,
looking at your private road cross-section, and it says 1 foot shoulder.
I'd agree with that now that I got my magnifying glasses on. Okay.
So change that to a 2, and that would work for me. I think that's a reasonable compromise. Everybody else on the board? Think that's an acceptable solution to that?
Something that's like nice solid aggregate, not little things.
Yes, it would be
Same as.
dense graded crushed stone. Right, it would not be pea stone or SurePack, and it would go the full depth of the subbase that's underneath the pavement.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, where did that leave us
Where are
off?
we?
We were at, we were at 03B.
That's it.
No street lighting is,
Street lighting.
the lights on the homes would have to comply with the zoning ordinance in terms of shielding and maximum wattage.
It seems like all the way through here, South Burlington was happy in their review with the stormwater. I think that's a
Yep, correct.
safe conclusion. Let's see. Same. Landscaping bond, there was a discussion about that.
Good, yeah, bring it up.
There was a question about who prepared your landscaping plan?
Brian Trembeck in our office prepared the landscaping plan, and for reference, he was the same person that came before you on the Quinniasca project that had prepared the landscaping plan there. The trees that were proposed, with the exception of the elms, I think, the species were, at least in part, selected based upon those that are typical of the Mesic clay plain forest, which we don't have within the development area, but is a natural community that exists further to the north along the La Platte River and does, to some extent, represent sort of an early emerging Mesic clay plain forest in the area to the north of the stream. So we were trying to select some trees that were typical of that area in order to carry that continuity down into the development area.
Okay. There was some discussion about the valuation you placed on the plantings. I don't know, do the regulations direct us to, is it the installed cost of the plantings, or when you do these calculations, or?
Yeah, it's everything. It's the cost of the plants and installation. So
Okay.
basically, it just gives you an option to require up to a certain percentage of the overall costs of the project for landscaping. That's really the only reason it's in there.
You guys, you have any problem with providing a landscape bond? Okay.
Probably not optional.
I'm satisfied with the landscaping. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think it's appropriate.
I'll defer to our expert.
Yeah, I defer to our president.
Are these rental or ownership or?
They're intended to be ownership.
Okay, so
That-
chances are people will add their own things once,
Yes,
yeah. So this is kind of a starter.
exactly,
Landscape
right.
and- yeah.
Somebody could certainly choose to add more at the time of construction and
Yeah.
could certainly add more on their own over time.
Yeah, it's hard to design the landscape plan when the houses are still kind of a dotted line, so. No commercial uses,
Where we at?
Talk to me a little bit, Caitlin, about 1900.7E.
requirement now for sidewalks, and then there's a table following on the next page.
Yep.
Based on the district, and so in this district, there's a requirement for sidewalks that follow the property line that have to be built to public works specs. And really, my own comment in there, it's been a little bit of a discussion because at the current moment, it will connect to nothing. But there's a future pedestrian bridge and sidewalk that's going in there. So
Yep, we hope.
they did it the way they were supposed to.
They've made an adequate accommodation for what we think is gonna happen there.
Right.
Okay.
I think the only other comments that could be up for discussion are actually from the Natural Resources and Conservation Committee. And you have those in your packet. They're kind of tucked into the plans.
We do.
I'd like to open up one before we get there. And
Okay.
Article 801 talks about features on the property and safety and well-being of future inhabitants. And it has to deal with that shed. As I recall, that shed, I don't know if it was safe or in the process of falling apart. In my mind, I'd hate to see little kids play at that shed and have it fall down on them.
Is that shed staying or going? The old,
It's expected to go.
Can we make it?
It is collapsing.
I was gonna say,
wouldn't walk in it today.
on its own, or are you guys gonna help it along?
Depends on timing, I think.
There's a shed there, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about the existing barn.
Yeah, can you guys take care of that and get that out of there?
Yeah.
It's a safety issue.
You want to see them replant anything under there?
Let's go back to nature.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And so prior to a building permit being issued, prior to a CO being issued?
Occupancy, prior to occupancy.
Okay.
Okay, so anything else, Jeff?
No, thank you.
All right, everybody got the copy of, Don Rendell's letter, or the letter that Don signed from the Natural Resource Committee. Did you have a chance to, review that letter?
Yes?
Did you have any, comments related to that letter, or have you guys addressed their concerns, or?
Well, the first suggested condition is a 75-foot undisturbed buffer upslope from the 150-foot elevation. I'm not sure why the 150-foot contour was selected, but there's a watercourse and floodplain overlay protection district that's in place.
Right.
And we're complying with the standard in place.
So if I'm looking at this right, the 150-foot contour runs
Generally along the top of bank, but it
top
swings in on Lot 3
Lot 3.
and would severely encroach upon the building envelope of Lot 3 if we applied a 75-foot buffer to it.
Right. Okay. Anything else? Let's see,
On sheet 1, there are proposed vegetation management standards for the overlay district. And really the only proposed management in that area would be removal of invasive species, not pulling them, but simply cutting them. The ground surface would stay intact. Stumps, anything like that would not be removed. The Conservation Committee was in disagreement with that. Again, I believe that the floodplain and watercourse overlay district regulations allow vegetation management. We aren't proposing anything other than the opportunity to manage the invasive species. At least providing that as an option to the.
did you guys meet with them?
We did. We met with them on February 14th.
Okay, and this letter is dated the 14th.
Martin,
We met with them in January.
This letter. And you met with them when?
We met with them February 14th, and they provided the letter March 14, I believe.
Okay.
And we met at Sketch Plan.
Right, we also met with them at Sketch Plan as well. And then thirdly, they're recommending that Lot 4 be deeded to the town. We've started that discussion with the town manager. I guess from the applicant's perspective, the ball's in the town's court on that now. We're looking for some feedback either from the town manager or the select board, but certainly if the DRB would make a recommendation or weigh in on that, it could carry some weight. Or if the DRB has strong feelings one way or another, certainly the applicant would like to know so that we're not headed down the wrong road.
So I'd like to digest this from the 75-foot undisturbed buffer thing. Okay, what rule should we put on for that buffer? Yeah.
Well, so there's no rule for the 70-foot buffer. So they're citing the subdivision regulations, so due regard for preservation of existing features, trees, scenic brooks, things like that. So they're citing that. Gail's here; she might be able to cite where that 75 foot from the 150 came in. Other than the subdivision regulations saying you should consider preservation of natural resources, I'm not sure that there is anything that.
Okay.
Right, there's nothing that dictates that,
Okay.
that number.
Got
I mean, you could certainly consider, I mean, it already is, well, so the vegetation management says the allowance for the removal of invasive species, so maybe if you want to amend that to, cutting, but no stump removal, just something along those lines, and a no-cut zone past that boulder wall area. Which is already kind of in place, but.
So what we've suggested in the vegetation management notes on sheet 1 is nothing would happen between the river and the river top of bank. The steep slope directly adjacent to the river, nothing would happen in that area. The management practices that are suggested on page 1 would only happen between that top of channel, the steep bank adjacent to the river, in that terrace area back to the back of the lots, to be marked by the boulders. And we do have on the plans, there shall be no removal of stumps or roots. There shall be no placement of topsoil or other fill. So we've tried to narrowly limit it just to removal of invasive species.
Okay.
And I guess my question would be is if you don't cut them, if you don't remove them, it's an ongoing affair. So,
Too bad you can't spray them.
well, you can, but I think maybe you could add some language that this would be something that was done at some interval, or there's some
Right, it would
long-term.
It would certainly not be effective if it was a one-time event. It would need to be an
It's got
ongoing
to be a
activity.
long-term commitment that I think probably needs to be documented somehow.
I mean, that's gonna be done like forever almost.
I think Gail wants to weigh in on this.
Oh,
Well,
are you gonna
hang
get rid
on,
of the
we're gonna
Volkswagen?
open it up to public comment in a minute.
I think there's an old Volkswagen in there. Is that evasive, and is that coming out?
I think there's at least one.
There's more than one,
There's a
Are they
couple in there.
coming out?
It's quite a variety.
Part of that safety thing again?
absolutely.
Thank you.
I think it's time for that stuff to go.
You want a Diamond T truck?
Trying to cut back.
1956 license plates on it.
No kidding. Wow.
So, okay, we've covered that.
And perhaps related, I mean, Parks and Rec Department comment?
Yep,
I just, I don't know if
we
this.
could dial over to that, sure. This is Betsy's.
Yeah. It's related to the landscaping question, perhaps.
What's it say?
view from across the river.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I have no opinion on that. It's about 8 pages, 10 pages in, Jeff. Why don't we open it up to public comment, and we can circle back to that. Gail, I saw you had raised your hand. I think I swore you in.
I wanted to explain a little bit more about the comment by the Natural Resources Committee with regard to non-removal of invasive species. Our concern was indeed around the maintenance and the likelihood that the invasive species tend, once cut back, to not only remain, but also to propagate. And so we felt that it would be more important to have no removal whatsoever within that buffer. The other reason for that was with respect to subdivision reg number 802, 800 parentheses 2, and that's with the due regard for viewscapes and natural areas, as well as for the viewscapes as well, because those units are directly across from the public overlook in the conserved La Platte area on the other side of the river, which was developed and paid for privately at public expense, I mean, at great expense. And it's a site that is revered in the town as a place where people can go to enjoy the natural area. And if they're looking into people's backyards, it's no longer that kind of site.
So what are you suggesting?
So what we were suggesting is that that entire range at the back of the
Back of the boulders?
the back of the homes, any of the area that is in the protected zone have a no-cut area altogether, including invasives, and that it extend the length of the development in order to protect that natural area that has already been designated.
Okay, so in our,
You need to define for me the difference between removal and cutting of invasive species. So you're suggesting then
That
basically
that
nothing?
the area be left as is.
get rid of the shed, get rid of the old cars and leave it alone then?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the area that's shaded.
Well, I'm talking about the area that's west of where the buildings will be.
Right,
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 right.
okay.
So then,
Between the buildings and the river.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
I mean, let me just
Yeah.
ask you a question. I mean, what's your, and I may rely on some of Jeff's input here. So if you tend to cut back and weaken, if you will, the invasive species, what impact is that gonna have to do, what impact will that have on the native species long-term, Jeff, if you were to do that?
If you were to not, well,
If you were-
I
if you-
agree with Gail that when you cut back the invasives that tend to grow around here, it's just taunting them and they just take off.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't remove the
You
root,
gotta actually remove them, or they just keep.
they'll come back
they'll come
fuller.
back. Yeah.
Whereas if you just let them grow, they kind of get leggy and aren't as kind of robust.
And then the concern is, I was not able to be on the site walk, and so I'm not really aware of the extent of the invasive species that are there. But given the 802 provision, if a significant amount of invasive species are removed, and they are there, then that sort of flies in the face of preserving the sight lines and the natural viewscapes.
Can't have it both ways.
So what you're advocating for is basically
No cut.
eliminating, it's an absolute no-cut zone, with the exception of, we would like to see them go in there and take out all the non-native materials, as is the barn that's falling down and.
The barn, yeah, the
and
non-native.
The Volkswagen in the 1940-something.
Non-native and non-invasive.
I mean, it's hard though, because it depends on what invasives are in there, because if there's grapevine in there, it's gonna grow up and choke out the native
Well,
trees.
that's, like, I fight
But if
that
you
on my
have-
property all the
yeah.
time, you know, so.
But if you have, honeysuckle or buckthorn, I agree, you don't wanna cut it back because it comes back thicker.
Right.
So it's hard. I don't know.
And the grapevines are not, as a grape grower,
Yeah.
they're not truly prolific in the woods as much
No.
as they are on the perimeter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I disagree with you. I fight that problem on my property all the time. It's killed a bunch of nice trees, so. Yeah, I'd be in favor of just maintaining it in a no-cut zone.
Yeah,
It's fine with me.
I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
All right.
And are you saying as it's depicted on the plans where Andy kind of shows where the building envelope ends, not the 75-foot from the
No.
150? Okay, just to clarify.
I think, yeah, the 75-foot from the 150 would almost make it impossible to develop Lot 3.
Well, maybe parts of lot 2 also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, if the 75-foot is only to the top of the cliff, then that sort of defeats the 802 provision of maintaining the natural area as it's viewed from the site across the river.
But
Well, Andy, you had somebody go out there, and they need to go out again, obviously, but
That was looking for threatened, rare, and endangered plants.
which is kind of what I'm getting
Sort of the
at.
opposite.
Like, if there's nothing rare, threatened, or endangered in that 75-foot buffer, I mean, if it's just a small area of views, we don't want them to be able to cut something that's rare, threatened, or endangered, but if there's nothing in there that's rare, threatened, or endangered, there's only the view aspect of it to consider.
But again, that viewing place across the river was developed by the town and with private funds as well, in order to be able to maintain that natural area and that natural setting. And if people are looking into people's backyards, it's not exactly a natural setting anymore.
It's true. I thought we were talking.
So across the way, across
Yeah,
the
no,
river.
we agree that there's no cut zone, right?
Well, she's saying, y'all agree there's a no-cut zone where Andy kind of showed that there's a no-cut zone, but Gail's, the comments, sorry, not Gail in particular, the comments from Natural Resources is that from that 150 contour, can you find it on there?
Yes,
It
yeah.
kind of pulls into
Yeah.
proposed Lot 3. So it'd be a limit, like no cut zone into Lot 3.
I got that, okay.
It seems like the question is whether the no-cut area should be the watercourse and floodplain overlay district, or whether it should be something more than that.
Right.
Yes.
And certainly from the applicant's perspective, we don't want it to be any more than that. As was noted, it cuts into Lot 3. It would also impinge upon Lot 2. Currently, you can see the roofs of both the mobile home and the Swanbourne house from the Overlook without vegetation on the trees. We'd also like to note that the Overlook is located on a driveway to a home that's located further to the north along the river. If we kind of zoom out here and look at this project as a whole, while we do have 3 duplexes that are on the southern portion of the property, which is generally consistent with the development pattern along Irish Hill Road, kind of that village pattern along the road, you've got 2.6 acres here to the north where nothing is being proposed. And I guess I forgot to mention it with the driveway reference, but there's also a home directly behind the Overlook.
Where is that Overlook in relation? Can you roughly
I
point
think it's
that
right
out?
about here.
Pretty much part across from the home number, lot number
Right.
3.
Well, maybe the town ought to move up the purchase of lot number 4 in their procurement of land, so.
Pardon?
maybe the town should consider moving up the purchase of lot number 4 in their acquiring of property for conservation. I think what do you think about, let me ask you this, Andy, what about the possibility of is this line, this tree line that goes around the northwest corner of lot, or along the northerly border of lot 3, that's a cutting limitation line there? That's limits of cutting, or that's existing?
No, that would be proposed. I mean, everything in that
Proposed
area
limits
is,
of cutting.
is a mix of,
Which line?
I think he's talking about this one here.
So 75 feet from 150 elevation pretty much wipes out lot units F, E, D, and C. How did you come up with the 100? How did you come up with that ruling? 75 feet from the 150-foot elevation. Was it arbitrary?
I think what we were trying to do was calculate the fact that there's a 35-foot limit on what homes are built, and we wanted the view to be able to hide those homes.
I get that with the elevation, but I don't get that with the.
I'm not the mathematician in our group, I'm afraid. But that was the number that we came up with. I can't justify it myself. Not
Okay.
that I don't think it's unjust, but I can't give you the calculations that we used in order to.
Did you guys appear at sketch plan?
Pardon?
Did you appear at sketch plan?
I believe we did.
Yeah, they were here.
Yeah,
They were here.
So using whatever calculation, you calculated that if, with existing vegetation, 75 feet in from 150 would hide everything.
Would hopefully protect that view, yes.
Okay.
Would
So, I mean, can you sort of calculate what it would look like? I mean, so if you use the current, proposed line here, no cut line, using that, would you calculate that you could see the roofs, see the backyards, see the whole, I mean, I'm just curious what the.
Unfortunately, I was not the
Okay.
person who was present at the site walk, and I was also not present at that last meeting. I was
Okay.
on vacation.
Okay.
And the person who is not here tonight, and I apologize for that.
Okay.
$75 feet from the 150.
What is the elevation of the overlook? What is the elevation of the overlook?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm full of good questions.
You're on this side.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, it's probably, it's right about at the intersection of those two lot lines. Right in here. 70. 160.
Yeah, I would speculate that our extra 75 feet was to try to have 75 foot of protection from the top of the cliff.
But 75 feet from the 150 is not in all cases the top of the cliff, based on these contours. If you,
No, because
No, it's
the
not, you're right.
150 is.
yeah.
We certainly don't want to propose this as a plan, but we did look at where
Thank you.
where the offset from the 150 contour ends up.
Right, so, yeah, you're basically taking lot 3 gets taken out of the equation. So, and chunk of lot 2.
Well,
So when I read 800.2, to me it's saying are you protecting natural features? Not are you protecting views from, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out.
I mean, unless you're talking about scenic points.
Yeah.
But even.
But
so,
scenic points is a natural, it's not a built
Doesn't say the
overlook.
view.
Well, and it's not a built overlook, it's a natural occurring scenic point.
Well, there was in fact, before the overlook was built with a little more space for people to be able to stand there and enjoy, and appreciate the view, there was a natural point there, which is why that site was chosen.
But if there's
But I guess
something
I'm-
there instead of the natural,
But to me, when I read it, it's not the view from the scenic point, it's the scenic point itself. I don't know,
no, I agree with you.
I'm having a hard time.
It's the view of the scenic point.
I don't know.
Well, it's not the way it's written, but it's subject to interpretation.
Yeah. It's a little
I guess
vague.
we'd just like to offer again that, you know, the homes that are already there, the mobile home and the Swanbourne home, when the leaves aren't on the trees, are visible. You've got two homes on the other side of the river, same side as the overlook, one driveway runs down past the overlook with the home further to the north.
It's not visible from the overlook or from,
It's not, but it's within this corridor that we're talking about. And it may not have been the intended purpose of the overlay district, but the overlay district preserving that 100-foot corridor along the river maintains the focus of the river. You know, if you're down there at the overlook, presumably you're looking at the area associated with the river and less so at the area in the mid or far ground from that area. I didn't look before tonight's meeting, but I believe that I had looked prior to sketch plan, and you know, there were no views identified, at least from Irish Hill Road down the river in this area in any comprehensive plan documents.
I mean,
Okay.
you can
Again,
definitely see homes from within
I mean, I
the
don't think
LaPlatte
800.2
nature area.
applies.
Absolutely. And
It's hard for me to say that
all the
a
way
view
around.
from one point is more important than
any other.
any other.
Yeah, I mean, so what are we doing? We're trying to preserve a no-cut zone, which is good. The developer is agreeable to put big physical delineators. Here's where your yard ends, don't touch back here, so that's a long-term attempt to maintain that. If the town thought it was important, they could have bought the land. We have a fund for that.
we tried.
Okay, well.
We did, and it was not made available by the owners.
Okay, well,
Well, you can't force them to. so-
can't force that. So I think there's an attempt.
Right.
We've also said that we're willing to discuss giving Lot 4 to the town, which is part of that river shed.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any other testimony from, we open it up to public comment? Thank you, Gail. Let's see, I think we made it through all of the items, in the staff report. I think we want to talk a little bit about some of the conditions. And so I think you've got clear direction on, you're gonna leave invasive species alone. Okay. And,
Can I stop?
yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
So it's all about screening. We're trying to isolate the backs of those homes from the view. So we talked about no cut, but what if we tried to plant something that would grow and be successful against the invasive species there? Then that will eventually form a natural barrier.
Well, it's only 15 feet
Yeah, it's pretty narrow.
between the building envelope and the existing,
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
Okay. Is that enough to
not a lot of room.
have something to grow there?
I guess it really depends on where the
I think you would be,
in the
Well, some of
envelope,
it's
right?
15 feet, but some of it might be larger also. I agree, it does choke down. as you get closer to some of the houses, but
I think you would be better off making sure the houses weren't red in color than trying to plant something.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's a neutral palette. It kind of blends in. I mean,
when you say 15 feet.
so from the edge of the no-cut zone to the building envelope.
No, I'm going the other way, into the no-cut zone. We're not gonna cut in there, we're gonna plant in there. We're gonna
Beef up what's already in there.
beef up what's already there. Put in, can we plant something that'll grow in the no-cut zone and eventually form a
It's
buffer?
going to prevail over the invasive species.
Yeah,
I think the invasive species are going to screen it the best, unfortunately.
And if that's, again, if you think that's the most effective way, okay, I respect that.
Nothing screens better than buckthorn.
Okay,
Honeysuckle.
we're good.
Does.
All right, I'll just throw that out there.
Thanks for trying.
Okay.
Do we
Okay.
want to put a color limit?
I mean,
Pardon? What's that?
the photos
Again,
were in black and white. I don't know if you have plans for the colors of the
non,
buildings, but
not aggressive color.
Fine.
Yeah.
A tree color.
camouflage.
Sheldon green blends
Camouflage siding. Yeah. Oh, there you go. That's pretty,
That's pretty good, yeah.
yeah. I'm comfortable.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so, any other questions from the board? Testimony from either the applicant or the public?
I guess I just have one more question. If we're really trying to protect that no-cut zone, will it be protected during construction? Because I know, equipment can back into wooded areas, they can, it's a
That's a
fenced
limited
off or-
disturbance line that's applies during construction. I mean, there will be some disturbance to pull some of the debris out of there and remove the
Yeah.
barn, but otherwise, the limited disturbance is there at the boulders.
Okay,
There's no intent to go in there during construction.
okay.
Okay. I'm just trying to jot down some conditions here so you guys have a clear picture of what we're looking for. So just for the board, I've got, install hidden drive right signs if the town doesn't do that by the time you, complete the development. Secondly, we're gonna widen the shoulders to 2 feet from the edge of the roadway. We're gonna do a no cutting or removal of invasive species, so they stay as is. And maybe we'll put something in there that the applicant will remove the shed and any non-native debris.
Do we,
Prior to granting of a certificate of occupancy.
does the no-cut zone extend into lot 4?
Well,
Yeah, do we need to specify?
I mean, do we want to leave lot 4, if it gets deeded to the town, are we keeping them from being able to remove invasives in lot 4? We could just say,
It's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, isn't it?
well, it's just, I don't know how they manage that for the whole nature.
boy,
It's not. Back
It's-
there, it's awful.
Okay, all right.
it's pretty, it was, yeah, pretty thick.
Okay.
I don't think, I really don't think we need to condition that.
Okay.
I think I don't want to put something on the town or the Nature Conservancy or whomever takes it over if they had a compelling reason to manage that property differently for some reason.
Just a far as conditions, I also heard somebody say that the landscape bond should be provided and just gonna work in a turnaround near Irish Hill.
Yep, getting there. I think, provide a landscape pond. We're 2 years, I think, right? South
Yep.
Burlington's 3, we're 2. A shed. And 3 would be, indicate on your preliminary or your final plan some type of a turnout or turning accommodation adjacent to lot 1.
Yeah,
I think
not
it was.
affiliated with an established driveway. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So, anything else?
Was there something about landscaping at the intersection so as not to interfere with sight distances?
I believe they've accomplished
that's
that.
good.
They show their limitations of clearing. They show clearing this little corridor right here. So I think that accomplishes that. Certainly improved the situation there, for sure. Okay, would anybody like to consider making any motions? Well, I'd be glad to then. I would move then to continue, finalize the record, and close the hearing and authorize preparation of, final plan for application SUB 17-02 with the following recommendations. 1, that the applicant shall be responsible for regular maintenance of all stormwater conveyance and treatment systems, or amend their declaration of planned community to include a specific requirement for the association to do so. Second would be to install a hidden drive to the right signs as recommended by the town. Prior to getting a certificate of occupancy on any one of the 3 properties. Third would be to widen shoulders to 2 feet from the edge of pavement. 3 would be no cutting of removal or removal of invasive species. Just modify your notes in your drawings.
For lots 1, 2, and 3
For
only.
lots 1, 2, and 3. Thank you. Removing any debris in the shed that's currently on the property that shouldn't be there. I'll let you figure that. You can figure that out. Non-native debris, whatever you want to call it. And next would be to provide a landscape bond for a period of 2 years. And third would be a widening or some type of turning accommodation at lot 1, adjacent to lot 1. Okay, Gail?
Just a clarification, I want to make sure that the way you're wording that, no removal of invasive species doesn't indicate that anything else is removable.
No, it's basically, Gail, an amendment to what they've already put on their plans. Is that clear, Andy?
Yeah, I think that note will say no vegetation management in that area other than dead or dying trees that might threaten the homes. That would be the only reason you'd be going in there.
Then let me restate that suggestion would be to modify their vegetation management plan to eliminate cutting or removal of any invasive species. Does that make sense? And that's all I have, so. Does that cover it? Okay, so, motion's been made. Anybody like to second it?
I will second that motion.
It's been seconded. Any further discussion? All of those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So that takes us, we got past that. This takes us to, next item on the agenda is conditional use application CU 17-03 R2, which is on the Quiniosca Golf Course practice facility, property at 5353 Spear Street. Let me steal your agenda again, if I may, so I get it right. Make sure I'm reading the right one. This is a proposal to include the expansion of a previously approved accessory hitting structure from 20 feet by 14 feet to 100 feet by 16 feet. And as I said, it's at 5353 Spear Street. It's in the rural district and the stormwater overlay district. And I believe I've sworn you in, and I would like to now swear anybody else in who's here to speak to this application. Very good. Do you hereby affirm to tell the truth, nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury? Thank you. Mr. Marshall.
For the record, I'm Dave Marshall from Civil Engineering Associates, and Kate has put up on the wall the site plan in regards to this particular 29-acre parcel that currently hosts the practice facility, currently owned and managed by Steve Gonzalez here for the hearing. To orient you on this particular plan, this is Spear Street on the left side of the graphic with north heading in the up direction. The existing driveway coming off of Spear Street brings you down into the parking lot with the existing management building and the previously permitted seasonal tent. And this is approximately the location of the previously approved weather-protected hitting structure. The reason we come before the board for this application is that weather has not been the greatest of friends in regards to the management of a weather-dependent operation of this particular nature. And what Steve has found is that he lost 32 days last year due to inclement weather and is looking to basically try to infill those with at least some business, and that basically would be enabled with the construction of the proposed hitting facility. There is an elevation that was included with the application. Jeff has that opened up if anybody's looking for what that typical building looks like. It's basically a shingle-sided structure, very similar to the existing management building out on the property. Basically 3 sides on the building, and then the 4th side obviously is open in order for the golf balls to leave that protected area and head out into the range. So this particular orientation, if we can go back to the site plan, thank you, basically is located on the far south end of the existing hitting, I'll call it the concrete apron that is installed at the backside of the flat portion of the range. This particular proposed building would occupy that southern portion. It would expand upon the existing concrete that's out there today. It's about 15 feet wide and obviously would go 26 feet to basically support the full width in the east-west direction of the proposed building. Right now, this particular building is located about 700 feet from the nearest residential building and well over 800 feet from the street. Things that we're trying to do to basically balance the new structure in regards to the sight lines from the street is to propose some tree plantings on the west side. Basically not try to overwhelm the area with trees that basically will grow up and be 70 feet tall, but something that basically will in masking the mass of the structure in the north-south direction. Other features in regards to staff comments. One particular observation is that the application included or referenced the original traffic study for this particular facility done back in 1999. One of the questions was, well, is that still applicable today? So when we look back at the study, the original traffic levels on Spear Street was 5,500 vehicles per day. The estimates for increases in traffic volume up to the year 2004 put that particular number at 6,230 vehicles per day. And that was what was utilized in determining the levels of service as far as turning in and turning out. The most recent available traffic counts from the Agency of Transportation indicates that there's 6,200 vehicles per day on the roadway today. So with regard to what was estimated in 2004 for the analysis of turning movements in and out of the site of 6,230, and the fact that 2016 count was at 6,200, actually is one of those few times when the traffic studies actually agree with what actually happened in real life. So we felt comfortable at least making the statement that with regard to the fact that this isn't intended to expand the operations, but only infill on the bad days, the operation is limited as far as how many mats can be, any hitting spaces can be opened at any one point in time by the state wastewater permit. So when, with regard to the management of those available hitting areas, again, that's limited and it represents no technical increase in at least the maximum number that could be utilizing the facility at any one point in time. It obviously will make the enjoyment of utilizing the facility during the weather challenge days a much better situation than it is today. Relative to the character of the building, again, that was intended to be a one-story structure with a traditional roof pitch. That basically brings us up to about 19 and a half feet. So I guess in this particular case, I think we'll leave that particular introduction there and take questions from the board to help fill in the blanks.
Okay.
So would this structure cover all, the entire, the existing pad, or just a portion of it, the portion to the
It would be
to the south of
sure.
the shed?
So right now that shows about 100 feet of length. That's the proposed structure. And then all the remaining area, the remaining 220 feet, basically would still remain open.
All right, thank you.
Just going back to the traffic study, you mentioned the 1999 level of what, 5,000?
5,500 vehicles per day. And there was a projected increase in annual traffic usage of the roadway. We took numbers that had been generated by the Agency of Transportation for Route 7 and basically applied those same growth rates for Spear Street to come up with the 6,230 vehicles per day, which was used in developing the levels of service for this particular facility. And with regard to the opportunities for people not only to turn in, but also to basically leave the facility and how long they would need to wait at that intersection doing so. We're not aware of any conflicts or any unacceptable operating conditions at that particular location, but nonetheless wanted to at least address staff's comment with regard to the
Do you have any idea what that will look like in another 5 years?
Well, in this particular case, we did see 700 vehicles out of increase over since 97 to 2016. So over those 19 years, we saw, let's see, do the math, 7 divided by 55, you're going to basically be looking at 12%, 13% increase. So I don't see a significant increase, but it is going to increase. I mean, that is the general trend in this particular area. But as far as the level of service and acceptability, level of C is the ideal or the minimum preferred, at least in these urban areas. And our opinion is that we'll still readily be within that limit.
Do you know if the hours of operation are proposed to change?
Steve, can you answer that a little bit?
Yeah, just use the mic so you're on on the record.
So no, the hours of operation will be the same. It's just, 25% of my business last summer we did zero business. So we need to have a structure where people can still come. And as you know from last meeting, when we got together last year, I do a ton of junior camps and ladies clinics and lessons. And with that tent scrape, you can't hit balls under the tent. So the hours, no, I don't see that changing.
Okay.
Yeah.
The structure is going to be 100% open on that one side that you hit out, or is that, a door that goes up and down?
My understanding is it's fully open.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
from the board?
I have one. I mean, and it may not be answerable, but I'm just wondering, I mean, if you had any sort of, 5-year, 10-year, plan for that area. I mean, if things go well and, your business continues to grow, I mean, how do you anticipate,
Sure.
accommodating your needs?
Sure. So, well, the golf season's pretty short. I mean, outside we open,
Yeah.
April 15th and close November 1st. Would I potentially down the road like to be open year round, where you can actually, if we have this structure and we're allowed to do this, maybe there's a way you could hit golf balls in the winter time. I already have an indoor golf facility, Gonzo's, and so that's simulated golf, but a lot of people like to hit balls outdoors. So if something down the road where you could actually be open year round and could get the same amount of golfers come in the winter, that would be cool. But I'd like to grow my business and have more kids, but they can't do that in the winter.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
and again,
Yes.
I was just thinking, I mean, so say, you have, once you get people on site, once you get people on property, I mean, obviously you want to, keep them there, but, some of the, I mean, no, never mind. I know it's a larger question. I'm just curious. I mean, because, I think it's a good thing, we've seen you a few times and, from the initial thing and then the tent and, now this, and I'm just curious.
So eventually I'd love to be open year round, but with not having a structure outside, it'd be tough to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Kind of be competing with yourself, wouldn't you? When were those traffic numbers taken, David? You
I'm sorry.
cited 90, you cited the traffic.
So
counts
the traffic study was done in
99?
99, but the last available traffic count was from 1997.
97.
And that was 5,500 vehicles per day in 1997. So actually, yes. So, and the most recent reported value from the Agency of Transportation for Spear Street within this particular segment of Spear Street was 6,200 vehicles per day in 2016.
Yep. So they missed the big spike when they were rebuilding Route 7.
Well, at this point, we didn't report back to it, and yes.
Okay. Anything else from board members? Joanne?
No, I mean, it seems like a very big change, looking at the proposed size of this structure compared to what's already been permitted, but in the context of where it's located, I don't have a problem with it, as long as we feel that the screening is appropriate, would be my thinking.
Yeah, I think, they're going to plant
Yes, some trees.
5 trees, but
I don't think we want to be doing a disservice to the business owner if it was completely hidden from the road.
right. And I
You
think,
want it so it's not obnoxious, but I don't think it is. It's a driving structure.
So Joanna brought up a good point. I think one of the reasons we felt more comfortable with the size of the building is just because of its long distance from the public points of access. But again, just because of the long nature of the building, we did want to introduce some form of landscaping to basically kind of break up that mass and
Look inviting.
well, it's kind of a balance, yes.
It's a long way from the road, but it's very visible from the road. There's nothing.
okay. So is there anybody from the public who would like to speak to this application? No? Okay. So we have a draft motion. I don't think we've placed any additional conditions as part of this discussion. So I would move to finalize the record for application CU 11-03R2. And I would also move to approve and to close this hearing and have staff prepare a decision to indicate approval of this application as depicted on the plan and application materials dated received February 21st with the following conditions. 1, a zoning permit shall be required prior to any improvements being made, and any conditions not addressed by this application are not altered by this conditions. By this decision, I'm sorry. All right, somebody seconded it. Who was first? I didn't hear. We'll give that one to Lisa. Okay. All right.
I just note that I think you said CU 11, but you did mean CU 17.
Sorry about that. It's out of my bifocal range. Got new glasses coming. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? All right,
Thank you for your time.
very good. Thank you, Dave. Good luck, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Regardless, we're hoping for a better summer. We hope to need that to keep you out of the blazing sun. Okay. So, I guess that takes us to, back to our originally what was item number 2, our reorganization meeting. What's that?
Before the other business items?
Well, we could do that too, if it's your pleasure. Do we have any other business or correspondence to discuss? Caitlin? Well, I would like to say something. This is going to be Caitlin's last meeting. And as you all
We would have
know,
brought cake.
Caitlin
Darn.
Caitlin's going to be leaving and going to grad school at Cornell, which is a tremendous accomplishment. And we wish you the best of luck, and we will certainly miss your service.
Thanks. It's been a pleasure working with you guys. You guys are a whole bunch of fun, and I've learned a lot from you guys. So thank you.
We've learned a lot from you. Thanks for keeping us on the straight and narrow. But best of luck.
We will be,
Send us some pictures, graduation pictures.
for real.
How long, is that a 2-year program?
Yeah.
Good. Well,
How long have you been here, Kate? Almost 3 years?
No, just a smidge over 2.
okay. A little over 2. It goes by. So.
So says you, but
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. You jumped in right before Harbor Place, right?
Sure did.
Yeah, you yep.
Chose the right
Hit the
time.
ground running.
Didn't even hit the frying pan, right into the fire.
Yeah.
So they're interviewing your replacement, is that?
Yeah. I think it's pretty narrowed down, but I don't think anybody will be in here until May. So, either somebody from the CCRPC will be in filling in. Dean could fill in.
This would be so
I don't
fun.
think I'll be filling in until that time, but
Okay.
Dean will keep it straight.
yeah, I mean,
You
yeah,
don't want to stick around?
we'll see.
Why don't
I'm
you
not sticking out of Vermont, but maybe I'll make a trip or 2.
You've done that before, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
Okay.
that's where we are. But other than that, oh, administrative site plan approvals under other business, pet food warehouse and Bono.
Yep.
Can
and
I ask you a
that's-
question about these?
Sure.
So for both of them, it says that there's materials attached for review.
Yeah, no, there isn't, is there?
No.
No.
And so I was confused. But then
So-
I was additionally confused because the pet food warehouse one refers to expansion into the previous Subway retail location.
Yeah.
Did Subway move or is Subway leaving?
Subway's leaving.
It is?
Yeah.
When?
I think they did or soon, May.
They're still there.
Okay. Well, the owners of Pet Food Warehouse have submitted this application, so Subway rents. So I think it'll be sometime in May is when they're looking to do the work.
Okay, good to know.
Get your
You need-
Subway in while you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they're administrative site plan approvals, so basically they're small enough that it just goes through staff, and as long as there's no like overwhelming question from the DRB,
Okay.
they're pretty much good to go. So
Okay. What's Bono doing again?
they're changing the vestibule in the back. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it's kind of like two entrances in a way, but
Right. Okay.
We sorted out that parking thing for them, right?
What's that? Bono?
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was.
yeah.
Yep. So I guess that takes us down to circling back to our reorg meeting. So,
So did you all want to discuss who? So we're looking for, well, really just the chair, but really just the chair at this point. But in May, you'll be doing another reorganization meeting when it's the chair, clerk, and vice chair.
this only lasts
Or
till
you
May.
can do it now.
This only lasts till May. Can't we just
Well,
get
no.
this over with?
I suppose you could just get it over with now. So it says between town meeting day and May, like
Yeah,
that
because
year,
that's
so-
just a window. It's just a
Right.
window of time. Yeah. I was
So you
under the
could do it
impression we
now.
were just going to do it now for. I think we have in between. It has to be done by May 1st,
Right.
right? So, no, I interpreted this to be. So,
anybody want to throw their hat in for
I would like to
chair?
nominate Joanna Watts for take the chair position.
I'll second that.
All right.
Okay, third, and so
I mean, I can probably muddle through, but only with everybody else's input.
we're all here to help.
And, you know,
We all
I
kind
have
of
the
prop
cheat
each other
sheet,
up.
so- Okay,
Good. Well,
I guess I will.
would anybody? It sounded like we got a second. I guess we'll do an official vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Do I abstain?
I think it doesn't matter. Okay.
Okay, so vice chair, any discussion? Mark is currently vice chair. Ian had mentioned something.
Ian, you're interested?
I inquired with Kate. I'm not sure I'm completely ready to sort of jump into that, but I know that, Mark, you're probably, eager to.
Hey, I've been doing it for a while, so I'd have. I think it'd be great. I know you had a lot of out of town obligations before, but
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you've been around a lot. And,
Yeah, it comes in fits and starts, and the fall tends to be the busiest time with that. But I don't know. You can't keep doing all the heavy lifting.
it's pretty easy. So
Yeah.
then I would love to nominate Ian
No.
McCrae to be the vice chair. Second. All those in favor? Aye. There.
Well,
Okay.
shouldn't open my mouth. Well, no,
Hey, if
yeah,
you get,
why not?
If you need to change it,
Why not?
that's things. Your business job seems to be pretty dynamic. So if something changes, no
Yeah.
problem. And I'd be glad to be the clerk.
Okay.
Joanne's had to backfill a
that'd
few
be great.
times doing that. So
Okay.
Yeah, more, I'm sure, than was expressed when.
to be honest with you, I don't even think we ever appointed a clerk.
I don't even know
Before
what I
that.
do. So I'll
so-
say you can do it.
Okay. All right. Well, then
They need a nomination.
somebody make a motion and I'll say
I'll
yes.
make a motion to nominate Mark
To be the clerk.
And I'll
to
second
be the
it.
clerk.
And I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Sounds good. Done that.
Wow, completely reorganized. Look at that.
Yeah.
Now, don't we need another member as well?
Yep.
Yep. And I inquired, I asked if Norm Blay would be interested, and I guess he wants to just stick as being an alternate.
Yeah.
So,
So
have to-
Joe knows that you guys are lacking a member. It's kind of up to him to put the feelers out there, and then the select board nominate, or, yeah, approves who
so,
that is, so.
Now, are they still gonna follow the same process? 'Cause I thought last time there was some discussion about whether or not it would be that same process because now it's a new select board and whether or not we would have any input and,
there's some proposals out there, from what I understand, to modify the appointment procedures for all committees, boards, and commissions. But I don't think that's been adopted at this point, but
No, so,
I think actually, Joanna, did you ever end up coming and interviewing one of
lots of
the,
stuff, yeah.
did you sit on one of the interviews for one of the, admin candidate? Yeah. So I, if the select board procedures are modified, then that, we may have more participation in appointment of another board member, but we kind of leave it up to Dean. I would suggest, just so we don't end up with any quorum issues, if any, since Caitlin, you're here till the end of the month, maybe just probably funnel it through Dean if you're not gonna be able to make it until they figure out who's gonna
Oh, right.
run the show.
Conflict between now and-
When you volunteered, was there a second person that didn't show up?
Yes.
Okay. So there was someone lurking out there in the wings.
there
Oh.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so somebody did, there was another person.
There
that
was
won.
another person who had
I forget who it
applied.
was.
I wanna say she had applied for something else before, and she submitted her materials late and didn't show up.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a good start.
Wait, no, you know what? Maybe she did show up.
No. She did.
Yeah,
I remember watching that select board meeting.
Okay.
You
I
were
don't
there, but-
remember.
And the other person was.
Okay, but she had submitted her materials late, I remember that. And there was a whole question of whether or not they should.
Right.
So a lot of times, over the years, this has just happened kind of by word of mouth, and, so it might hit Front Porch Forum or
Yeah.
the paper or something, so, but if you know anybody who'd
Yep.
be interested, and,
Yeah.
I think Boulder Hill is tapped out.
yeah, you guys are overrepresented.
Between that and the neighborhood association, right?
So, yeah, I would just suggest
The
we,
sight lines from our house, though, I tell you, the McRae's. I can see your roof.
I was gonna say, what, can you, what?
yeah, we better adjourn. So, I would move then to adjourn, the meeting.
Second.
Seconded, all those in favor? Aye.